The phone rang insistently 3 times in a row before falling silent. In the opulent living room, 6-year-old Elizabeth was a picture of distress, trembling uncontrollably with tears streaming down her delicate face. Sophia, the maid, clutched her phone tightly, whispering urgently into the receiver, "Sir, if you don't get here immediately, she's going to completely destroy your daughter." Across the expansive room, Victoria stood ominously like a dark shadow, her piercing, cold eyes relentlessly fixed on the terrified little girl. Richard, however, chose to ignore the desperate call, foolishly believing that the situation couldn't possibly be as dire as Sophia claimed. Little did he know that this moment of hesitation would cost him everything he held dear, leaving his precious daughter to fight for her very life. Hello everyone and welcome to our story. Before we dive in, please take a moment to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more captivating tales. And don't forget to let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Whether it's the United States, London, Canada, Jamaica, South Africa, or anywhere else in the world, we're eager to hear from you. Back in the dimly lit corner of the living room, 6-year-old Elizabeth cowered against the wall, her small frame visibly shaking with fear. Her once pristine pink dress, a cherished gift from her father just last month, was now wrinkled and stained with her many tears. Her usually bright and inquisitive brown eyes were now vacant, filled only with a deep-seated terror. Sophia's grip on her phone tightened, her knuckles turning bone-white as she struggled to maintain composure. Though merely the maid in this grand house, she felt like the only one who truly cared about the well-being of this innocent little girl. She pleaded into the phone once more, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and barely suppressed anger. I don't want to, she mumbled, her voice barely audible. The room fell silent. Richard looked genuinely surprised. "What do you mean, princess? You said you were excited about being a flower girl." "That was before," Elizabeth whispered, her eyes downcast. "Before what?" Richard's voice now carried an edge of concern. Victoria jumped in quickly, her voice full of false sympathy. "She's just nervous, darling. It's a big event with lots of people watching. It's natural for children to feel a bit overwhelmed." She reached across the table towards Elizabeth, her hand outstretched. "It's okay to be scared, Elizabeth. We'll practice together. I'll help you." Elizabeth recoiled slightly, pulling her hand away from Victoria's reach. It was a subtle movement, but it spoke volumes. Richard noticed, his eyebrows furrowing in concern. "Elizabeth, what's going on?" The little girl's eyes began to fill with tears. Sophia could see her struggling internally, wanting to speak the truth, but paralyzed by fear of the potential consequences. This was the pivotal moment. If Elizabeth could just say something, anything, maybe Richard would finally see the truth. "I don't," Elizabeth started hesitantly. "She's tired," Victoria interrupted smoothly. "She didn't nap today like she usually does. Right, Elizabeth? You're just tired and grumpy." It wasn't a question, it was an instruction. Elizabeth's mouth closed, her lips pressed tightly together. She nodded slowly, her gaze averted. Richard visibly relaxed. "Well, after dinner it's straight to bed then. No arguments." Sophia couldn't remain silent any longer. "Sir, if I may." "Not now, Sophia," Richard said dismissively, waving his hand in the air. "We're having family time." Family time. The words felt like a sharp slap in the face. Sophia had been more of a family to Elizabeth than Victoria ever could be, but she was merely the maid. Her opinions and feelings didn't count. "It hurts all the time now, especially when Victoria is here." Sophia made a mental note, adding it to the growing list of red flags. This was another symptom, another sign that something was seriously wrong. When it was time to leave for school, Elizabeth moved even slower. She put on her shoes as if they weighed 100 pounds each. She picked up her backpack and immediately set it down again, her eyes filled with dread. "I don't want to go to school," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Why not, sweetheart?" "Because when I come home, you might be gone, and then I'll be alone with her." The fear in Elizabeth's voice was real and raw, a stark reminder of the danger she was living in. This wasn't a child being dramatic. This was a child who understood, on some visceral level, that she was in grave danger. Sophia made a decision in that moment, a decision that might cost her everything, but a decision she knew she had to make. Elizabeth, I need you to do something for me at school today.
What?
I need you to tell your teacher that you're scared at home.
Can you do that?
Elizabeth's eyes went wide, filled with a mixture of fear and hope. But Victoria said, I know what Victoria said, but your teacher is a safe person. Her job is to protect children. If you tell her the truth, she can help. What if she tells Daddy, and he gets mad? He might get mad. But, Elizabeth, you're not safe. And being safe is more important than Daddy being mad. Elizabeth thought about this, her small face scrunched up with worry as she weighed the risks. Will you get in trouble? Probably. But I don't care. I care about you. Okay, Elizabeth said finally, her voice small but determined. I'll tell Miss Sarah. Sophia drove Elizabeth to school, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that her knuckles turned white. This was a risk, a huge risk. Never, Richard repeated, holding her tighter. You are my whole world, Elizabeth. You are everything to me. I love you more than anything, and I promise I'm going to do better. I'm going to be the daddy you deserve. Across the street in her parked car, Sophia watched through tear-filled eyes as Richard carried Elizabeth out of the school. The little girl had her arms wrapped tightly around her father's neck, her face buried in his shoulder. It was over. Elizabeth was safe. Richard finally knew the truth. Sophia's phone rang. Jane's number. They're going home, Jane said. Richard wants to see you. He wants to apologize and wants you to come back, not as a housekeeper, but as Elizabeth's nanny. He says, Elizabeth needs you. Sophia was too overcome with emotion to speak. Sophia, are you there? Jane asked. Yes, she managed to say, her voice thick with emotion. Yes, I'm here. I'll come. Tell him I'll come. She hung up and watched Richard's car pull out of the parking lot, Elizabeth safe inside. The nightmare was ending. But as Sophia started her car to follow them, she saw something that made her blood run cold. Victoria's car was parked at the corner, hidden in the shadows. Victoria was still watching, and the look on her face through the windshield was one of pure, unadulterated hatred. This wasn't over. Not yet. Sophia followed Richard's car from a distance, keeping a watchful eye on Victoria's vehicle parked at the corner. But as Richard turned onto the main road, Victoria's car didn't move. It just sat there, dark and still. Maybe Victoria had given up. Maybe she realized she had lost and would just disappear. But Sophia's gut told her otherwise. People like Victoria didn't just give up. They got revenge. At the house, Sophia parked behind Richard's car and walked slowly to the front door. It felt strange coming back, as if she were entering a different world than the one she'd left that morning. Richard opened the door before she could knock. Sir Richard, please, I'm begging you, if you don't come home right now, she's going to destroy your daughter. Please, you have to come home. But the call went unanswered, diverted once again to voicemail. Across the room, Victoria stood tall and imposing, resembling a queen in her elegant black dress. The sharp clicks of her high heels echoed across the marble floor as she slowly approached Elizabeth. Everything about Victoria exuded perfection. Her meticulously styled hair, her flawless makeup, and her expensive jewelry all contributed to an image of polished beauty. However, her eyes betrayed the facade, remaining chillingly cold and devoid of warmth. Elizabeth, Victoria said in a deceptively soft tone, yet her voice carried an undercurrent of sharp menace. I instructed you to tidy up your toys before dinner. Why must you always disappoint me so? I'm sorry, Elizabeth stammered, her voice barely audible across the room. Sorry? Victoria scoffed, her laughter devoid of any genuine amusement. Sorry doesn't fix anything, does it? Your father works tirelessly to provide you with everything you could ever want, and this is how you repay him? By being lazy and difficult? Sophia's heart pounded heavily in her chest. She had witnessed this manipulative behavior far too many times before. The way Victoria would twist her words, skillfully making a 6-year-old child feel overwhelmingly guilty for simply being a child. But this time felt different, somehow more sinister. "Miss Victoria, please," Sophia interjected, stepping forward in a protective manner. "She's just a little girl. She didn't mean any harm." "Did I solicit your opinion?" Victoria snapped, her head turning towards Sophia with the swiftness of a striking snake. "Remember your place, Sophia. You are here to clean and cook, not to offer unsolicited parenting advice." Sophia bit back a retort, but her hands trembled with barely contained anger. Victoria cast a triumphant glance at Sophia, her eyes conveying a clear message. "You see? He'll never believe you. You've already lost." After dinner, Richard carried Elizabeth upstairs to her bedroom. Sophia followed closely behind with a glass of water, desperately hoping to find a moment alone with him. But Victoria was right behind them, her heels clicking on the stairs like a foreboding countdown. In Elizabeth's bedroom, Richard carefully tucked his daughter under the covers. "Sweet dreams, princess. Daddy loves you. Daddy." Elizabeth's voice was barely audible. "Can Sophia stay with me tonight, please?" Richard looked momentarily confused.
Why?
"Are you feeling sick?" I want her here," Elizabeth pleaded. "Sophia has other work to do, sweetheart," Victoria said smoothly from the doorway. "She can't spend all her time in your room. Besides, you're a big girl now. Big girls don't need someone to watch them sleep." "But I'm scared," Elizabeth whispered, her voice trembling. "Nonsense," Victoria said, her voice still sweet, but with a hint of steel beneath the surface. "What did we talk about?" "About being brave." Elizabeth's face crumpled, but she managed to hold back her tears. "Okay." Richard kissed her forehead and stood up. "Sleep tight. I'll see you in the morning." As they left the room, Sophia lingered for a moment. "I'll just tidy up a bit, sir. Then I'll come down." Richard nodded and left with Victoria, seemingly satisfied. Sophia waited until their footsteps had completely faded away, then rushed back to Elizabeth's bedside. "Elizabeth, listen to me," she whispered urgently. "You have to tell your father what's happening. He needs to hear it from you." "I can't," Elizabeth whimpered, her eyes wide with fear. "She'll hurt me." "Has she hurt you physically?" Sophia asked, her voice laced with concern. Elizabeth shook her head. "Not like that, but she hurts me in other ways. She says things that make me feel bad inside." If the teacher didn't take it seriously, or if she called Richard first instead of child services, Victoria would find out, and then Sophia couldn't even begin to imagine what would happen. But doing nothing was no longer an option. At the school, Sophia walked Elizabeth to her classroom. Miss Sarah was a young teacher with kind eyes and a warm smile. She noticed immediately that Elizabeth looked upset, her usual bright demeanor replaced with a subdued sadness. "Good morning, Elizabeth. Are you feeling okay?" Elizabeth looked at Sophia, who nodded encouragingly, silently urging her to be brave. "Miss Sarah?" Elizabeth's voice was barely a whisper. "Can I talk to you alone?" Miss Sarah's expression changed from friendly to concerned. "Of course, sweetheart. Come sit with me." She looked at Sophia, her eyes conveying a silent promise. "I'll take care of her." Sophia wanted to stay, to hear what Elizabeth would say, to make sure it was taken seriously, but she knew she had to trust that this teacher would do the right thing. "Be brave," Sophia whispered to Elizabeth, squeezing her hand. Then she turned and left, her heart pounding in her chest. She drove back to the house in a daze, replaying the morning's events in her mind. What had she just done? Had she saved Elizabeth or inadvertently made everything worse? When she got home, the house was eerily empty. Sophia started packing her things mechanically, her movements numb and automatic. She didn't have much: clothes, some books, a few personal items. Her whole life in this house fit into 2 suitcases. Her phone rang, the shrill ringtone shattering the silence. It was an unknown number. "Hello," she answered tentatively. "Is this Sophia Martinez?" A professional female voice, calm and authoritative.
Yes.
"Who is this?" "This is Jane Collins from Child Protective Services." We received a report this morning about a child named Elizabeth Walker. The report came from her school teacher. His eyes were red from crying, and he looked a decade older than he had just yesterday. Sophia, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Please come in. Inside, Elizabeth was sitting on the couch in the living room, wrapped in a blanket. When she saw Sophia, her face lit up. Sophia. She jumped up and ran into Sophia's arms. You came back. I thought you were gone forever. Sophia held her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of the little girl's shampoo. I'm here, sweetheart. I'm not going anywhere. Richard cleared his throat. Elizabeth, could you go upstairs for a few minutes? I need to talk to Sophia alone. Elizabeth's face clouded with fear. You're not sending her away, are you? No, princess. Never. I just need to apologize to her in private. Grown-up talk. Okay. Elizabeth nodded slowly and went upstairs, looking back twice to make sure Sophia was still there. When she was gone, Richard gestured for Sophia to sit. He stood by the window, looking out at the garden, unable to meet her eyes. I owe you an apology, he began. Actually, I owe you more than that. I owe you my daughter's life, her sanity, her future. His voice broke. Instead of listening to you, instead of trusting you, I called you a liar. I chose a monster over the woman who was trying to save my child. Mr. Walker, Sophia interrupted gently. Please let me finish. Richard turned to face her, tears streaming down his face. My wife died almost 2 years ago. Cancer. It was fast and brutal, and it destroyed me. I threw myself into work because I couldn't handle being home without her. I left Elizabeth with babysitters and housekeepers because every time I looked at her, I saw my wife's eyes staring back at me, and it hurt too much. Sophia listened quietly, her heart aching for him despite everything. Then Victoria came along, Richard continued. She was beautiful and sophisticated, and she said all the right things. She made me feel alive again. She had been working in this house for the past 2 years, watching Elizabeth blossom from a cheerful 4-year-old into the scared and withdrawn child she was now. And this unfortunate transformation had begun when Victoria entered their lives just 8 months prior. Richard had been incredibly lonely after the tragic passing of his wife, and Victoria had initially seemed like the perfect companion, beautiful, educated, and undeniably charming. She knew exactly what to say and when to say it, smiling at all the appropriate moments. Blinded by grief and loneliness, Richard had fallen for her carefully constructed facade hook, line, and sinker. However, Sophia had seen through the deception, witnessing firsthand what happened when Richard left for his frequent business trips. She had seen the true Victoria, the one hidden beneath the surface. Elizabeth's stomach rumbled quietly, a stark reminder that it was nearly 8 p.m. and the little girl hadn't had anything to eat since lunchtime. Victoria had cruelly punished her by withholding dinner because Elizabeth had accidentally spilled juice on the carpet that morning. Please, Elizabeth whimpered again, tears streaming down her face. I'm hungry. Victoria smiled, but it was a chilling smile that sent shivers down Sophia's spine. Hungry? Victoria knelt down in front of Elizabeth, her perfectly made-up face just inches away from the child's terrified one. Then perhaps next time you will exercise more caution. Maybe next time you'll think before you create a mess. Actions have consequences, Elizabeth. The sooner you learn this valuable lesson, the better. Sophia couldn't bear to witness the torment any longer. She made a move towards the kitchen, intending to defy Victoria's orders. I'll make her a sandwich. You will do no such thing, Victoria said sharply, standing up so fast that her heels clicked sharply against the floor. And she breaks my stuff, and sometimes she won't let me eat. The words tumbled out in a rush, like a dam finally breaking. Okay, Sophia said, gently holding the little girl's hands. I'm going to record this. I'm going to show your father. Is that okay? Elizabeth looked absolutely terrified.
She'll know.
She always knows. I won't let her hurt you. I promise. But even as Sophia spoke those words, she couldn't help but wonder if she could actually keep that promise. Downstairs, Richard poured himself a drink in his study, seeking solace in the amber liquid. Victoria sat gracefully on the leather couch, watching him with calculating eyes. "You look stressed, darling," she said softly. "Just work. The merger isn't going as smoothly as I had hoped." Victoria stood up and walked behind him, placing her hands on his shoulders. "Maybe you need to delegate more. You're carrying too much on your own." "Maybe," Richard said, taking a long sip of his drink. "Victoria, can I ask you something?" "Of course," she replied, her voice laced with concern. "Is everything really okay with Elizabeth? She seems different lately." Victoria's hands tensed for just a split second, then relaxed. "Different how?" she asked, tilting her head slightly. "Quieter, more withdrawn. She used to be so bubbly." "She's adjusting," Victoria said smoothly, maintaining her composed demeanor. "Her mother died less than 2 years ago. She's still grieving. And now she has to share you with someone new. It's hard for children, but with time and patience, she'll come around." It made sense. It all made perfect sense, logically. But something in Richard's gut told him that there was more to the story, something he couldn't quite put his finger on. "And Sophia," Richard continued, his brow furrowed. "She keeps trying to tell me something about Elizabeth. She seems worried." Victoria moved around to face him, her expression carefully crafted to convey concern. "I understand you're the family's housekeeper?" Sophia's legs went weak, and she sank onto the edge of her bed.
Yes.
"Yes, I am. We need to speak with you about the situation in that household. Can you meet with me today?" "Yes, absolutely. Whenever, wherever you want." They arranged to meet at a coffee shop in 2 hours. Sophia hung up the phone and sat back hard on her bed, her mind reeling. It was happening. The system was finally paying attention. But she also knew that this was just the beginning of a war, a battle that was bound to be messy and fraught with danger. Victoria wouldn't go down without a fight, and Richard. Richard would be devastated, confused, and undoubtedly angry. Sophia looked at the clock, calculating the timeline in her head. Richard wouldn't be home until evening. Victoria was at her appointments. Elizabeth was at school, hopefully safe in the care of Miss Sarah. For the first time in weeks, Sophia felt a tiny spark of hope flicker within her. Maybe, just maybe, this nightmare was about to end. Or maybe it was about to get much, much worse. The coffee shop was quiet, the gentle hum of conversation a stark contrast to the turmoil raging inside Sophia. She sat in a corner booth, her hands wrapped tightly around a cup of tea she hadn't touched. Every time the door opened, her heart jumped, her senses on high alert. Finally, a woman in a gray suit walked in, her eyes scanning the room with a practiced, assessing gaze. She was in her 40s, with sharp, intelligent eyes and a tired face that spoke volumes about the suffering she had witnessed throughout her career. "Sophia Martinez?" the woman asked, approaching the table. "Yes, Miss Collins. Please call me Jane." She sat down and pulled out a folder and a small recording device. "Do you mind if I record this conversation?" "It's standard procedure." "No, not at all. Please, record everything. I want the truth to be known." And I was so desperate to feel something other than grief that I ignored every warning sign. "My sister tried to warn me. You tried to warn me. Even Elizabeth tried to tell me. But I didn't want to hear it because that would mean admitting I had made another terrible mistake." "You were grieving," Sophia said gently. "People do things they regret when they're in pain. That's no excuse. My daughter needed me, and I abandoned her. I let a predator into our home and gave her unlimited access to the most precious thing in my life." Richard sat down heavily. "Jane Collins told me Elizabeth might need years of therapy to recover from this. Years because of my stupidity. But you know now," Sophia said, "you saw the truth, and you chose Elizabeth. That's what matters." "Is it enough, though? Will Elizabeth ever trust me again?" "Children are forgiving, but you have to show her every day that you've changed. You have to be present. Really present." Richard nodded. Jane said the same thing. She also said that Elizabeth needs stability right now. Familiar faces, people she trusts. He looked at Sophia. "She trusts you more than anyone. Will you stay?" Not as a housekeeper. I'll hire someone else for that. But as Elizabeth's nanny, her companion. I'll pay you whatever you want. Just please don't leave her. Sophia felt tears in her eyes. I don't need more money, Mr. Walker. I stayed because I love Elizabeth. That hasn't changed. Thank you. Richard's voice was barely a whisper. Thank you for not giving up on her when I did. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything that had happened settling between them. What about Victoria? Sophia asked. What happens now? I've already called my lawyer. We're getting a restraining order. She's not allowed within 500 feet of this house or Elizabeth's school. I'm also pressing charges. Child abuse, emotional abuse, whatever will stick. She won't take that. Well, I don't care. Let her try something. I established the rules in this house when Richard is away, and I have clearly stated that there will be no dinner for her. She's only 6 years old. Sophia's voice cracked with emotion. You can't starve a child. For a brief moment, a dangerous glint flickered in Victoria's eyes. But then she plastered on her signature smile, that cold, perfect smile that never reached her eyes. Careful, Sophia, she warned. You're making accusations that could potentially cost you your job. Do you really want to test my resolve? Just then, Sophia's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out with trembling hands, desperately hoping for some form of salvation. It was a text message from Richard, indicating that he was currently in a meeting. Can't talk now. Everything okay? Everything was far from okay. Sophia glanced at Elizabeth, who had curled up into a tight ball, pulling her knees up to her chest and burying her face in them. The poor little girl was desperately trying to suppress her tears, attempting to become invisible. Sophia quickly typed back, No, sir.
Please call me as soon as you can.
It's about Elizabeth. It's urgent. She hit send and offered a silent prayer that this time, Richard would heed her warning, that this time he would finally see what was happening to his daughter before it was too late. But as she watched Victoria walk away with that self-satisfied smile on her face, and as she heard Elizabeth's quiet sobs echoing in the corner, a cold wave of fear washed over Sophia. What if Richard didn't believe her? What if he dismissed her concerns as the ramblings of a jealous maid trying to stir up trouble? What if he ultimately chose to believe Victoria over his own flesh and blood? The phone remained stubbornly silent. No call came. In the corner, Elizabeth whispered something so softly that Sophia almost didn't catch it. I want my mommy. Sophia's eyes welled up with tears. Richard, I didn't want to say anything, but I think Sophia might be jealous. Jealous?
Of me?
Of us? Richard asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. Victoria sat down, carefully choosing her words. She's been with Elizabeth since your wife died. She's had a special bond with her. And now I'm here, taking over some of those responsibilities. I think she's worried about her place in this household. So, she's creating problems, making you think there's something wrong when there isn't. Richard asked, his voice incredulous. Richard frowned. Sophia wouldn't do that. She cares deeply about Elizabeth. I'm sure she does, Victoria said, her voice laced with subtle manipulation, but people do strange things when they feel threatened. Victoria reached for his hand, her touch gentle and reassuring. I'm not saying we should fire her, but maybe we need to establish clearer boundaries. Make it clear that while she's wonderful at her job, the parenting decisions are ultimately ours to make. It made sense. It all made terribly logical sense, playing directly into Richard's preconceived notions and insecurities. Upstairs, Sophia finished recording Elizabeth's testimony. The little girl had recounted everything, every cruel word, every destroyed toy, every lonely night spent crying herself to sleep. It was heartbreaking to witness, but it was also irrefutable evidence. Sophia saved the video and immediately backed it up to the cloud, ensuring that it would be safe and accessible. Then, she took a deep breath and headed back downstairs, steeling herself for the confrontation to come. She found Richard and Victoria in the study, engrossed in conversation. They both looked up as she entered, their expressions unreadable. Sir, I really need to speak with you, Sophia said, her voice firm and resolute.
Alone.
Victoria stood up, her movements fluid and graceful. "Actually, Richard and I were just discussing you, Sophia," she said, her tone carefully neutral. Jane pressed the record button and folded her hands on the table, her expression serious. "Tell me about Elizabeth Walker. Tell me everything you've seen and heard." Sophia took a deep breath, trying to quell the anxiety that threatened to overwhelm her, and began. She told Jane about the destroyed toys, the skipped meals, the cruel and demeaning words, the punishments that far outweighed any minor transgression. She told her about the rules Victoria had forced Elizabeth to memorize and recite, the constant pressure to be perfect, and the subtle but insidious ways in which she was being emotionally abused. She told her about the castle project that had been so lovingly constructed, only to be torn to pieces in a fit of calculated cruelty. She showed Jane the videos on her phone, Elizabeth's heartbreaking testimony, the recordings of Victoria's cold, calculating voice giving orders and delivering veiled threats. Jane watched everything in silence, her face growing more serious with each passing minute, her eyes narrowed with a mixture of anger and concern. "How long has this been going on?" Jane asked, her voice low and steady. "About 6 months, but it's gotten significantly worse in the last 2 months. Ever since Richard proposed to Victoria, it's like she's intensified her efforts to isolate Elizabeth and break her spirit." "And the father, Richard Walker, is he aware of what's happening?" Sophia's voice shook with emotion. "He doesn't see it. He's completely blind to what's going on right under his nose. Victoria is very good at hiding her true self when he's around. She's charming, loving, and puts on a perfect facade. Richard is lonely and vulnerable. His wife died almost 2 years ago, and he desperately wants to believe that Victoria is the answer to all his problems. Have you tried to tell him what's happening? Have you tried to make him see the truth?" "Yes, multiple times. I'll bury her in legal paperwork." But Sophia remembered that look on Victoria's face, that cold, calculated hatred. Victoria wasn't the type to attack head-on. She would wait. She would plan. She would strike when they least expected it. "Mr. Walker, I saw Victoria's car at the school today. She was watching us leave. I don't think she's going to just accept this." Richard's jaw tightened. "I've already arranged for a security system upgrade. Cameras, alarms, the works. It'll be installed tomorrow, and I'm taking the next 2 weeks off work to be with Elizabeth. Victoria won't get near us." Sophia wanted to believe him, but something in her gut kept screaming that danger was still coming. Upstairs, Elizabeth called out, "Sophia, can you come up?" "Go," Richard said. "She needs you." Sophia climbed the stairs and found Elizabeth in her bedroom, sitting on her bed with a stuffed rabbit. "Is everything okay?" Elizabeth asked nervously. "Daddy isn't mad at you?"
No, sweetheart.
"Everything is okay. Actually, your daddy asked me to stay here with you. Not as a housekeeper, but as your friend. Would you like that?" Elizabeth's face broke into the first real smile Sophia had seen in months. "Really? You're staying?" "I'm staying." Elizabeth jumped off the bed and hugged Sophia tight. "I was so scared you were gone forever. I prayed and prayed that you would come back. Well, your prayers worked." They spent the rest of the afternoon together. Richard ordered pizza for dinner, something Victoria never allowed because she said it was common food. Elizabeth ate 3 slices, more than Sophia had seen her eat in weeks. Around 3 a.m. the next morning, Sophia's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You think you've won? You haven't. I always get what I want. Always." Sophia deleted the text and turned off her phone. She wouldn't give Victoria the satisfaction of a response, but she also didn't sleep another minute that night. She longed to run to the little girl, to embrace her tightly and reassure her that everything would eventually be all right. But Victoria was watching her intently from the doorway, her arms crossed defiantly, daring Sophia to disobey her unspoken command. The large clock in the living room ticked loudly, each second feeling like an eternity. And somewhere across the city, Richard sat in his important meeting, completely oblivious to the fact that his daughter was slowly falling apart. He was completely unaware that the woman he was planning to marry was meticulously dismantling the only family he had left. He was completely unaware that his hesitation, his refusal to acknowledge the truth, might very well cost him everything he held dear. 3 agonizing days had passed since that desperate phone call. 3 days of Sophia relentlessly trying to reach Richard. 3 days of Victoria's control tightening around Elizabeth like an inescapable rope. Sophia stood in Elizabeth's bedroom, her heart sinking as she surveyed the broken pieces of a school project scattered across the floor. It was a paper castle that Elizabeth had painstakingly spent 2 weeks building for an upcoming class presentation. She had been so incredibly proud of it, eagerly showing Sophia every tower and every tiny window she had meticulously drawn with colored pencils. Now, it lay in ruins, torn into countless pieces, and Sophia knew without a doubt who was responsible for its destruction. She said it was ugly, Elizabeth whispered from her bed, her voice sounding unusually weary, far too tired for a 6-year-old. She said my teacher would laugh at me if I brought it to school. Sophia's hands trembled as she carefully picked up a piece of the ruined castle. Elizabeth had drawn a little girl in one of the windows, a girl who was smiling and waving cheerfully. That version of Elizabeth now seemed like a distant memory, something belonging to a different life altogether. When did this happen? Sophia's stomach dropped, a sense of dread washing over her. Sir, please. Just 5 minutes. That's all I ask. Richard looked visibly uncomfortable, caught between his loyalty to Victoria and his lingering concern for his daughter. Sophia, Victoria mentioned that you might be having some concerns about your role here. I want you to know that we value your work, but it's not about my role, sir, Sophia interrupted, her voice rising with urgency. It's about your daughter. Please just look at this. She pulled out her phone and started to play the video of Elizabeth's testimony. But Victoria moved with lightning speed. She stepped directly between Sophia and Richard, her face etched with an expression of exaggerated concern. Richard, this is exactly what I was talking about. She's recording Elizabeth without your permission. She's putting words in that child's mouth. I didn't put words in her mouth. Sophia shouted, her voice shaking with frustration. Elizabeth told me the truth. She's scared of Victoria. That's enough. Richard's voice was firm, brooking no argument. He looked at Sophia with a mixture of disappointment and disapproval. I can't have you going behind my back, recording my daughter, and filling her head with negative ideas about Victoria. This behavior is entirely inappropriate. But sir, if you would just watch the video, Sophia pleaded, her voice desperate. No, Richard said, holding up his hand to silence her. I think Victoria is right. We need to establish some clear boundaries. From now on, your duties will be strictly housework. No more private time with Elizabeth. Is that clear? Sophia felt as though she had been physically punched, the breath knocked out of her lungs. You're not even going to look at the evidence. Richard's voice was now laced with anger. What evidence? A video you coerced my daughter into making while she was confused and grieving, saying whatever you wanted her to say. I've pleaded with him. I've shown him examples of Victoria's behavior, but she has completely convinced him that I'm jealous, that I'm lying, that I'm deliberately trying to cause trouble. Sophia's eyes filled with tears of frustration and despair. Last night, he told me I'm not allowed to spend time alone with Elizabeth anymore. Victoria wants me fired. She wants me out of the house, so there's no one to protect Elizabeth. Jane wrote notes quickly, her pen flying across the page. Has Victoria ever physically hurt Elizabeth? Has she ever laid a hand on her? Not that I've seen. But emotional abuse is abuse too, right? It leaves scars that are just as deep, just as damaging. Absolutely. You're right. Emotional abuse is just as harmful as physical abuse. What you're describing is psychological abuse and neglect, a systematic campaign of emotional manipulation and control. The question is whether we have enough concrete evidence to legally intervene to justify removing Elizabeth from the home. What happens now? What are you going to do? I'll go to the school and interview Elizabeth myself. I'll also need to speak with Richard Walker and get his perspective on the situation. And depending on what I find and the corroborating evidence, we may need to remove Elizabeth from the home temporarily to ensure her safety. Remove her? Sophia's voice rose in panic. Where would she go? Where would she be safe? Foster care, or possibly with a relative if there's someone suitable, someone who can provide a stable and nurturing environment. Does Richard have any family who might be able to care for Elizabeth? Yes. He has a sister, Margaret. She lives a few hours away. She never liked Victoria, and she tried to warn Richard about her, but he wouldn't listen. Jane wrote down the name. Do you have any contact information for her? A phone number or an email address? Sophia frantically searched her memory, trying to recall any details that might help Jane contact Margaret. She sat with her back against Elizabeth's door, eyes wide open, listening to every sound. The house creaked and settled. Wind rattled the windows. Somewhere outside, a dog barked. Normal sounds. But tonight, everything felt threatening. As dawn began to break, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Sophia finally relaxed slightly. They had made it through the night. Elizabeth was safe. But as the sun rose higher, Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Victoria had lost her perfect life, her wealthy fiancé, her place in high society. She had been humiliated and exposed. And people like Victoria didn't just accept defeat. They got even. The question wasn't if Victoria would strike back. The question was when, and what would she do when she did? Over the next few days, strange things started happening. First, someone called Child Protective Services with an anonymous tip that Richard was an unfit parent who left his daughter alone for hours. Jane Collins had to come back to the house to investigate, though she quickly dismissed the claim after seeing how involved Richard was. This is Victoria, Jane said bluntly. She's trying to make you look bad. Keep documentation of everything. Every meal you make for Elizabeth, every activity you do together, every moment you spend with her. If Victoria tries this again, we'll have proof. Then Richard's car tires were slashed in the driveway. The security cameras hadn't been installed yet, so there was no proof of who did it, but everyone knew. Elizabeth's school called to say someone had tried to pick her up, claiming to be Elizabeth's aunt. The school refused, following Richard's strict instructions that only he or Sophia could collect Elizabeth, but it terrified everyone. Victoria was getting bolder. We need to move, Richard said one night after Elizabeth went to bed. Get out of this city. Start fresh somewhere she can't find us. Running won't solve this, Sophia said. Sophia asked gently, her voice filled with concern. Last night, after Daddy went to sleep, Elizabeth replied, hugging her beloved stuffed rabbit even closer. She came into my room and said she was just checking on me. But then she saw the castle and she started tearing it apart. Did you tell your father? Sophia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Elizabeth shook her head quickly, fear flashing in her eyes. Victoria said if I tell Daddy anything, she'll throw away all my toys. She said Daddy loves her more than me now. She said he'll believe her, not me. Sophia felt a wave of nausea wash over her. This was far worse than she had initially feared. Victoria wasn't simply being cruel. She was deliberately trapping Elizabeth, ensuring the little girl remained silent and isolated. Listen to me, sweetheart, Sophia said softly, sitting on the edge of the bed. Your daddy loves you more than anything in this world. You're his princess, remember? Elizabeth's eyes filled with fresh tears. Then why doesn't he see? Why doesn't he stop her? It was the same question Sophia asked herself every single day. Richard was an intelligent man, a successful businessman who managed a company with hundreds of employees. How could he possibly be blind to what was happening right under his own roof? But Sophia knew the answer. Richard was choosing to be blind because he desperately wanted to be. He was consumed by loneliness, still mourning the loss of his wife. And Victoria was an expert at playing her part perfectly whenever Richard was around, skillfully manipulating his emotions. The sound of high heels clicking in the hallway sent a chill down both of their spines. Sophia. Victoria's voice rang out, deceptively sweet as honey.
Where are you?
I need you in the kitchen. Sophia squeezed Elizabeth's hand reassuringly.
Stay here.
I'll handle this. She found Victoria standing by the kitchen counter, holding a list in her hand. That's not evidence. That's blatant manipulation. I didn't manipulate her. Sophia cried, tears streaming down her face. I'm trying to protect her. Victoria placed a soothing hand on Richard's arm. Perhaps Sophia needs some time off. A break might help her gain some perspective. No. Sophia's voice cracked with desperation. If I leave, who will protect Elizabeth? Who will stand up for her? My daughter doesn't need protection from her own family, Richard boomed, his voice echoing through the study. She needs protection from those who are trying to poison her mind against Victoria. The words hung heavy in the air, like a suffocating cloud of smoke. Sophia stared at Richard, the horrifying realization washing over her that she had lost. Victoria had won. He completely believed his fiancée, choosing his own denial over his daughter's safety. Get out, Richard said, his voice dangerously quiet. Go to your room. We'll discuss your employment in the morning. Sophia wanted to scream, to grab Richard by the shoulders and shake him until he saw the truth that was so clearly in front of him. But she knew it was futile. He was too far gone, completely under Victoria's spell. She glanced at Victoria, who wore a small, victorious smile that Richard couldn't see. Yes, sir, Sophia whispered, defeated. Her legs trembling, she left the study. Upstairs, she could hear Elizabeth crying softly in her room, a sound that tore at her heart. But Sophia couldn't go to her. She wasn't allowed anymore. She retreated to her own small room at the back of the house and sat on the bed, her mind spinning, desperately searching for a solution. What now? What could she possibly do? Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Stop interfering. Last warning. It was from Victoria. She must have taken Sophia's number from Richard's phone. Sophia deleted the message and lay back, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow she might be fired. She remembered seeing Richard's old contact list on his desk and, racking her brain, she managed to recall the number. She gave it to Jane, hoping Margaret would answer, hoping she would be willing to help. What about me? Sophia asked, her voice laced with fear. Victoria threatened to destroy my reputation if I spoke out. She said she'd accuse me of stealing, of being inappropriate with Elizabeth. She's capable of anything. Jane's face hardened, her eyes flashing with anger. Those are serious allegations, and making false accusations like that is a crime in itself. But I won't lie to you, Sophia. This is going to get messy. Victoria sounds like someone who will fight back hard, someone who's used to getting her own way. I don't care what happens to me, Sophia said fiercely, her voice unwavering. I just want Elizabeth safe. That's all that matters to me. Jane studied her for a moment, her eyes filled with a mixture of admiration and sadness. You really love that little girl, don't you? Like she's your own daughter. Yes, Sophia replied, her voice thick with emotion. Like she's my own daughter. I would do anything to protect her. Jane nodded slowly. The world needs more people like you, Sophia. People who are willing to stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult and dangerous. She stood up and packed her folder, preparing to leave. I'm heading to the school now to speak with Elizabeth and her teacher. Don't go back to the house yet. Wait for my call. If Victoria finds out what's happening before I can ensure Elizabeth's safety, she might do something desperate. The word desperate sent a chill down Sophia's spine, and a new wave of fear washed over her. You think she would actually hurt Elizabeth? I think cornered people do unpredictable things. When they feel like they're losing control, they can be capable of anything. It's better to be safe than sorry. Just stay away from the house and wait for my call. Victoria will find us. People like her always do. We need to stand our ground and prove she can't break us. Richard looked torn. But what if she hurts Elizabeth? What if she
won't get the chance.
The security system is installed now. Elizabeth is never alone. And Victoria knows that if she tries anything physical, she'll go to jail. But Sophia's confident words didn't match her fears. Every night she checked the cameras before bed. Every morning she checked them again. Victoria hadn't shown up on film, but Sophia knew she was out there, planning, waiting. That night, Sophia was checking the security cameras before bed when she saw something that made her heart stop. On the camera pointing at the front gate, a figure stood in the shadows. The night vision made the image grainy, but Sophia could make out enough details. It was Victoria. She was just standing there, staring at the house, not moving, not leaving, just watching. Sophia called Richard and James immediately. They rushed to the front of the house, but by the time they got outside, Victoria was gone. She was there, Sophia insisted, showing them the recording. Right there. I believe you, Richard said. This has to stop. She's escalating. What more can we do? Sophia asked desperately. We have restraining orders, security, a bodyguard. What else is there? I don't know. Richard looked defeated. But we can't live like this forever. Looking over our shoulders, jumping at every shadow. Elizabeth deserves better. 3 days later, they were at the house, packing to leave for Richard's sister's place. They needed to disappear until Victoria was arrested. They were loading the car when they heard it. Tires screeching. A black car came around the corner too fast, Victoria's car. She jumped out, her hair messy, makeup smudged, looking wild. Richard, please, we need to talk. Get in the car, Richard said to Sophia and Elizabeth. But Elizabeth froze, staring at Victoria with terrified eyes. The bright morning sun streamed through the large windows, causing Victoria's sparkling diamond ring to catch the light. That ring. Richard had proposed to her just 2 months ago, and the wedding was meticulously planned for next month. 1 month. Sophia had only 1 month to save Elizabeth before Victoria officially became her stepmother, solidifying her control. I'm having guests for lunch tomorrow, Victoria said without even looking up. Important friends. I need you to prepare everything perfectly. The menu is here, she said, handing Sophia the list. And make sure the dining room is spotless. I can't afford any embarrassing mishaps. Yes, Sophia said quietly, her voice barely audible. Victoria finally glanced up at her, her expression unreadable. You seem upset, Sophia. Is something the matter? The question felt like a carefully laid trap. Sophia chose her words with extreme caution. No, everything is fine. Good, Victoria said, smiling. Because I would hate to think you were filling Elizabeth's head with strange ideas. Children can be so impressionable, you know. They believe whatever adults tell them. There it was, a thinly veiled warning wrapped in polite conversation. Victoria was fully aware that Sophia had been trying to protect Elizabeth, and she was making it abundantly clear that Sophia needed to stay within her designated boundaries. I would never do anything to upset Elizabeth, Sophia said, meeting Victoria's cold gaze. Of course not, Victoria replied, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. You care about your job too much for that. After Victoria left the kitchen, Sophia pulled out her phone. She had been meticulously documenting everything, taking photos of Elizabeth's destroyed belongings, recording the instances when Elizabeth wasn't allowed to eat, and writing down every cruel thing Victoria said when Richard wasn't present. But would it be enough? Tomorrow, Elizabeth would be even more alone, more vulnerable. Tomorrow, Victoria's control would be absolute. But Sophia wasn't giving up, not yet. If Richard refused to listen, she would find someone who would. She just had to figure out who, and she had to do it before it was too late. Because somewhere in this house, a little girl was crying herself to sleep, convinced that no one cared enough to save her. And that belief, Sophia knew, was more dangerous than anything Victoria could ever do. Morning arrived with a cold silence. Sophia woke up early, her eyes swollen from crying. She hadn't slept well, haunted by Elizabeth's face, scared, alone, and hopeless. She got dressed and went downstairs to start breakfast. Even though she didn't know if she still had a job, the house felt different this morning, heavier, as if the very walls were holding secrets. In the kitchen, she started making coffee, her hands moving automatically while her mind raced through possibilities. She could call Child Protective Services, but what would she tell them? That a woman was mean to her stepdaughter? That she destroyed toys and skipped meals? It sounded so insignificant when said aloud, even though Sophia knew it was destroying Elizabeth from the inside. She could try to contact Richard's sister, Margaret, who lived 3 hours away. But Margaret and Richard hadn't spoken in months after a heated argument about the wedding. Margaret had voiced her concerns, saying Victoria seemed fake, and Richard had angrily told her to mind her own business. "Good morning, Sophia." Sophia jumped, nearly dropping the coffee pot. Victoria stood in the doorway, impeccably dressed in a silk robe. Her hair was perfectly styled, and her makeup was already flawlessly applied. She looked like she had slept peacefully, without a care in the world. "Good morning," Sophia said quietly, trying to keep her voice steady. Victoria walked to the counter and poured herself a cup of coffee. After Jane left, Sophia sat alone in the coffee shop, watching the clock tick by with agonizing slowness. Minutes felt like hours, and every passing second was a reminder of the danger Elizabeth was in. She ordered another tea just to have something to do with her hands, but her appetite was non-existent. She couldn't eat, she couldn't focus, she could only worry and wait. Her phone buzzed, shattering the tense silence. It was a text from Victoria. "Asterisk, where are you? The house is a mess. Get back here now." Sophia didn't respond. She couldn't risk revealing her location. Not yet. Another text arrived moments later. "Asterisk, don't ignore me, Sophia. You're already on thin ice. You're skating on the edge of a very dangerous situation." Then another. "Asterisk, fine. You're fired. Don't bother coming back. I'll have your things sent to you. Consider yourself dismissed." Sophia stared at the messages, her heart pounding in her chest. Part of her felt relieved that she didn't have to face Victoria again, that she was finally free from her control. But another part of her felt terrified, her mind racing with worst-case scenarios. What if Victoria went to pick up Elizabeth from school early? What if she got to Elizabeth before Jane did, before she could ensure her safety? Desperate, Sophia called Jane's number, her fingers trembling as she dialed. It went straight to voicemail. "Miss Collins, it's Sophia. Victoria just fired me. I'm worried she might go to the school to try and get to Elizabeth. Please make sure Elizabeth is safe. Please call me back as soon as you can." She hung up and buried her face in her hands, overwhelmed by fear and helplessness. This waiting was torture, an agonizing test of her resolve. An hour later, her phone finally rang, the familiar ringtone a beacon of hope in the darkness. It was Jane. "Sophia, I'm at the school. I've spoken with Elizabeth and her teacher. The child is clearly traumatized." Victoria grabbed the gate bars, shaking them. "You can't throw me away like garbage. I gave you everything. I was perfect for you. There's a restraining order. Leave now," Richard called out. "I don't care about the law. We were supposed to be a family. You destroyed any chance of that when you hurt my daughter." Victoria's face twisted with rage. "She's the problem. That little brat ruined everything. Don't talk about her like that. You choose her over me, a pathetic child over everything I could give you. Every single time, every day for the rest of my life, I choose my daughter." Something snapped in Victoria's eyes. She reached into her bag and pulled out a glass bottle. "If I can't have this family," she whispered, "then nobody deserves to be happy." "Victoria, don't!" Richard shouted, but Victoria's arm was already moving. She held the bottle with all her strength. Time slowed down. The bottle spun through the air. Richard stood frozen. Elizabeth was just behind him. "Elizabeth, move!" Sophia screamed, lunging forward. Too late. The bottle struck Elizabeth on the side of her head with a sickening crack. Glass shattered. Elizabeth crumpled to the ground. "Elizabeth!" Richard's scream tore through the air. He dropped to his knees beside Elizabeth. Blood seeped from a cut on her temple. "Elizabeth! Baby, open your eyes." Sophia fell beside them. Elizabeth's eyes were closed. She wasn't moving. Blood pooled beneath her head. "Call an ambulance." Richard's voice broke. Sophia already had his phone out. Victoria was staring at Elizabeth's body, her face pale. "I didn't mean to." "Shut up," Richard roared. Sophia pressed her hand against Elizabeth's wound. "Elizabeth, please wake up."
Please, sweetheart.
Elizabeth's face was pale, her breathing shallow. The ambulance arrived within minutes. Paramedics rushed out, checking vital signs. Possible skull fracture.
We need to move now.
They lifted Elizabeth onto the stretcher. Richard climbed in with her. Would Richard believe her carefully gathered evidence, or would Victoria somehow manage to explain it all away, twisting the narrative to suit her own sinister purposes? Sophia scrolled through her phone and stopped at a video she had secretly recorded just 2 days earlier. In the video, Victoria was forcing Elizabeth to recite a list of rules. I will not make noise when Daddy is working. I will not ask for snacks between meals. I will not cry like a baby. I will not bother Victoria when she is busy. I will be a good girl, or Daddy will be disappointed in me. Elizabeth's voice in the video sounded robotic, as if she had repeated these words 100 times before. And perhaps she had. Sophia's finger hovered over Richard's contact number. She had to try again, to make him understand the gravity of the situation. But before she could press the call button, her phone buzzed with a new message from Richard. Coming home tonight. Might be late. Don't wait up. He would be home tonight. This was Sophia's chance. She quickly typed back, Sir, please. I need to speak with you privately when you arrive. It's about Elizabeth. It's very important. The 3 dots appeared, indicating that he was typing a response. Then they disappeared. Then reappeared again. Finally, his response arrived. Sophia, if this is about Victoria and Elizabeth not getting along, I'm aware they need time to adjust. Everything will be fine soon. Sophia's heart sank. He wasn't listening. He didn't want to listen. She typed back desperately, Sir, please.
It's more serious than that.
Elizabeth is not okay.
She's scared.
But before she could finish her sentence, another message popped up. I trust Victoria. She's been nothing but patient with Elizabeth. Maybe you're the one who needs to adjust, Sophia. Let's not make this into something it's not. Sophia stared at the phone in disbelief, feeling utterly helpless. How could she possibly make him see the truth? Richard had to leave early for a meeting. He'll be gone all day. She took a sip, her eyes fixed on Sophia over the rim of the cup. He said we should talk about your future here. I just want to do my job and take care of Elizabeth. That's the problem, Sophia. You think taking care of Elizabeth is your job. It's not. I'm going to be her mother soon. I decide what she needs. She needs someone who loves her, Sophia said, her voice shaking with emotion. She needs someone who doesn't make her feel worthless. Victoria's smile vanished. Be very careful what you say next. Or what? You'll fire me? You'll take away the one person who actually cares about that little girl? I'll do worse than that. Victoria slowly set down her coffee cup, her eyes gleaming with cold fury. I'll make sure you never work in this city again. I'll tell everyone you stole from us. I'll say you were inappropriate with Elizabeth. I'll destroy your reputation so completely that no one will even look at you. Sophia's blood ran cold. Victoria meant every word. She could see the unwavering malice in those cold, calculating eyes. Why do you hate her so much? Sophia whispered, unable to comprehend such cruelty. She's just a child. I don't hate her, Victoria said calmly, as if discussing the weather. I'm teaching her. The world is cruel, Sophia. It's better she learns that now from me than later from strangers. I'm making her strong. You're breaking her. I'm fixing her. Victoria's voice was like ice. That child was spoiled, weak, and far too attached to her dead mother's memory. Richard needs a wife, not a daughter, who cries every time she sees her mother's picture. I'm helping Elizabeth move on. Richard just can't see it yet. Sophia stared at Victoria, the full, horrifying truth finally sinking in. This wasn't about discipline or adjustment. This was about erasing Elizabeth's mother from her heart. She broke down crying when I asked her about what was happening at home. She's terrified of Victoria. Is she okay? Is she safe? Sophia asked, her voice barely a whisper. She's with me right now, and I'm not letting her out of my sight. I've also contacted Richard Walker, and he's on his way to the school. He's going to be angry, probably, and confused, but that's not your problem. You did the right thing, Sophia. You saved that little girl from years of potential abuse. Sophia felt tears streaming down her face, tears of relief, tears of joy, tears of exhaustion. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to me, for believing me. I'll call you later with updates. For now, stay where you are. Stay away from the house until I give you the all clear. If Victoria finds out what's happening before I can fully secure Elizabeth's safety, there's no telling what she might do. The warning sent another wave of fear through Sophia. You think she would actually hurt Elizabeth? I think cornered people do unpredictable things, as the agent said. Better safe than sorry. After Jane hung up, Sophia wasn't thinking rationally, but acted out of some primal instinct. She needed to see for herself. She wanted to confirm that Elizabeth was safe, even if it meant that she had to be watching from afar. She drove to the school and parked across the street to see the happenings, but avoiding being identified. As she sat there, she watched as Richard's car pulled in some 20 minutes later. He got out looking confused and worried. He ran into the building. Then, shortly after, Victoria screeched in. From the exterior, the rage on her face was evident as she stormed towards the school. What followed would be the moment of truth. Inside the school, Richard looked at Jane Collins as though she spoke in riddles. I don't understand, he'd said for the third time. You're saying my daughter is being abused by Victoria? That's impossible. Mr. Walker, Jane replied. Follow us, he told Sophia. Police were already handcuffing Victoria. I didn't mean to hurt her, she sobbed. I swear. You threw a bottle at a child, an officer said sharply. Sophia didn't stay to watch. She followed the ambulance, hands gripping the wheel, praying desperately. At the hospital, Richard ran alongside the stretcher. A nurse stopped Sophia at the doors. Family only. I'm her nanny, please. The nurse softened. Wait here. We'll update you. Hours crawled by. Finally, Richard emerged, his face gray. She's alive, he said. Sophia nearly collapsed with relief. But she's in a coma. Skull fracture and brain swelling. They're doing surgery now. Oh God. The next 24 hours are critical. They don't know if there will be permanent damage. They don't know when or if she'll wake up. Richard broke down, and Sophia held him as he sobbed. After surgery, they were allowed into the ICU. Elizabeth lay in a bed too big for her small body. Bandages wrapped her head. A breathing tube was taped to her mouth. Wires connected her to beeping machines. Her skin was paper white. Richard took her hand. I'm here, princess. Daddy's here. Days passed in a blur. They took turns sitting with Elizabeth, talking to her, reading stories, playing music. The swelling went down slowly, but she didn't wake up. On the 5th day, Sophia was reading The Little Mermaid when she felt it, a tiny movement in Elizabeth's hand. Elizabeth? She squeezed gently. Can you hear me? Nothing. Then, fingers twitching against her palm. Richard. Sophia shouted. She moved. They watched Elizabeth's face. Her eyelids fluttered. Princess, we're right here. Richard grabbed her other hand. Slowly, Elizabeth's eyes opened. Unfocused, confused. A nurse rushed in. She's waking up. The medical team swarmed the room, running tests, removing the breathing tube. When they finally stepped back, Richard leaned close. Princess, can you see me? Elizabeth's eyes found his face. Daddy. How could she break through his impenetrable wall of denial? Upstairs, she heard Elizabeth's bedroom door creak open. Then came the sound of footsteps, small and hesitant, moving towards the bathroom. Sophia went upstairs and found Elizabeth standing at the sink, staring blankly at her reflection in the mirror. The little girl looked so small and lost. Elizabeth, what are you doing, honey? Sophia asked gently. Elizabeth reached out and touched her reflection in the mirror. Victoria says I look like my mommy, but she says it in a mean way, like it's a bad thing. Sophia's chest tightened with emotion. Looking like your mommy is a beautiful thing. Your mommy was... I know, Elizabeth interrupted softly. Sophia, do you think mommy can see me from heaven? I think she can, sweetheart, Sophia replied. Then why doesn't she help me? Why doesn't she make Victoria stop? Sophia had no answer for that. She knelt down and pulled Elizabeth into a comforting hug. The little girl felt so incredibly fragile, as if she might break at any moment. "I'm going to help you," Sophia whispered reassuringly. "I promise. Your daddy is coming home tonight, and I'm going to make him understand." "Okay," Elizabeth said quietly, pulling back and looking at Sophia with those tired, world-weary eyes. "He won't believe you. Victoria always wins." "Not this time," Sophia said, even though she wasn't entirely sure she believed it herself. That afternoon, Sophia meticulously prepared for Richard's arrival. She organized all her evidence, the photos, the videos, and the detailed notes she had been keeping. She carefully rehearsed what she would say, formulating her arguments in a way that she hoped would resonate with him. And she prayed with all her might that this time, her words would penetrate his defenses and shatter his illusions. But as the sun began to set and she heard the familiar sound of Richard's car pulling into the driveway, she witnessed something that made her blood run cold. Victoria wanted to be the only woman in Richard's life, and Elizabeth was simply in the way. "You're a monster," Sophia breathed, the words barely audible. Victoria laughed, a chilling, triumphant sound. "I'm practical, and I'm going to win because Richard loves me. He'll choose me every time." She picked up her coffee. "You have until tonight to pack your things. I want you gone by the time Richard comes home. He hasn't fired me yet."
He will.
"I'll make sure of it." Victoria walked toward the door, then paused, turning back with a glint in her eyes. "Oh, and Sophia, if you try to take that video to anyone, I'll sue you for violating our privacy. I'll have you arrested. Do you understand?" Sophia said nothing, paralyzed by fear. "I asked you a question." "Yes," Sophia forced out, the word a mere whisper. "I understand."
Good.
Victoria left, her silk robe flowing behind her like a queen's cape, leaving Sophia alone in the kitchen, her whole body shaking. She had hours, just hours, before she would be thrown out, and Elizabeth would be completely at Victoria's mercy. Upstairs, she heard a door open, followed by small footsteps padding down the hallway. Elizabeth was awake. Sophia climbed the stairs and found Elizabeth standing outside her bedroom door. The little girl was still in her pajamas, her hair messy from sleep, her eyes red and swollen from crying. "Good morning, sweetheart," Sophia said softly, trying to sound reassuring. Elizabeth looked around nervously, as if afraid of being overheard. "Where's Victoria?" "In her room, getting dressed." Elizabeth relaxed slightly. "Sophia, I heard shouting last night. Was it about me?" Sophia's heart broke. "No, baby. It wasn't your fault." "Everything is my fault," Elizabeth said in that flat, tired voice that no child should ever have. "That's what Victoria says. She says I ruin everything." Sophia knelt down to Elizabeth's level, taking her small hands in hers. "Listen to me very carefully. I've spent an hour with Elizabeth. I've seen the videos and heard the testimony. Your fiancé has been systematically breaking down your daughter's spirit for months."
No.
Richard shook his head in disbelief. "No. Victoria loves Elizabeth. She's been patient with her. She's trying to help her adjust." "Does this look like adjustment?" Jane questioned as she angled her laptop in his direction, one of Sophia's recordings showing. In silence, Richard watched 6-year-old Elizabeth's dead voice saying, "I will not make noise when Daddy is working. I will not ask for snacks between meals. I will not cry like a baby. I will not bother Victoria when she is busy. I will be a good girl, or Daddy will be disappointed in me." Pale, Richard said, "When was this recorded?" 3 days ago. Your housekeeper says that she's forced to recite these every morning for 2 months straight." Richard was getting doubtful. "That's not Victoria wouldn't." He stopped talking. He was doubtful now. Jane played another video. Standing above Elizabeth, Victoria's voice came. "You're just like your mother.
Weak.
Pathetic. No wonder your father never talks about her anymore. She was a disappointment, too." Richard's hands shook at the video. "She said that about my wife?" "There's more, Mr. Walker," Jane began. "But I think you get the picture." Suddenly, the door crashed open as Victoria barged through. Richard, thank God you're here, she began. These people are trying to take Elizabeth away. It's all the lies by that maid, Sophia. She's lying about me because I was going to fire her. Richard looked to Victoria, eyes assessing whether he was truly seeing her. Did you make Elizabeth recite rules every morning? He demanded. For only a second, Victoria hesitated. I was teaching her discipline. Children need structure. Did you tell her she was weak like her mother? He asked again. She stuttered. I never dashed, she caught herself. Richard knew. He knew. Richard burst into tears. Yes, baby. I'm here. My head hurts. I know. You've been sleeping for 5 days, but you're awake now. You're going to be okay. Where's Victoria?
Jail.
She can never hurt you again.
Good.
Elizabeth's eyes close. I'm tired. Sleep, baby. We'll be right here. Over the next week, Elizabeth grew stronger. Tests showed no permanent brain damage. She would need therapy to heal, but she would recover completely. She's incredibly lucky, the doctor said. 2 weeks later, Elizabeth came home. The house felt safer with Victoria's shadow gone. That first night, Sophia tucked her in. Elizabeth's head was still bandaged. Sophia, I heard you in the hospital. I heard you reading to me. You heard us? Your voices were like lights helping me find my way back. Tears filled Sophia's eyes. We never stopped hoping you'd come back. Victoria tried to kill me, didn't she? Yes, but she failed. And she's going to prison for a very long time. Will you sleep in my room tonight? Sophia climbed into bed beside her, and Elizabeth curled against her side. Months passed. Elizabeth's wounds healed. The bandages came off, leaving a faint scar on her temple. The emotional wounds took longer, requiring therapy twice a week. But slowly she began to laugh again, to play, to draw bright, hopeful pictures. Victoria was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Richard didn't attend. He stayed home with Elizabeth and Sophia making cookies. Richard formally made Sophia Elizabeth's legal guardian. Her role evolved from nanny to family. They had survived the storm, nearly lost everything, but found their way back to each other. The scars would always be there. The memories would never fully fade. But Elizabeth wouldn't carry them alone. She had her father, who had learned what truly mattered. She had Sophia, who had risked everything to save her. And she had herself, a little girl who survived and came out stronger. Victoria had tried to destroy them. Victoria was in the living room with Elizabeth, patiently braiding the little girl's hair and smiling sweetly. And when Richard walked through the door, the scene looked utterly perfect, a picture of a caring stepmother to be bonding with her future daughter. Daddy. Elizabeth tried to sound happy, but Sophia could detect the underlying fear in her voice. There's my princess, Richard said, dropping his briefcase and opening his arms wide. Elizabeth ran to him, and he scooped her up into a warm embrace. Did you miss me? Elizabeth nodded against his shoulder. And were you a good girl for Victoria? Richard asked. Elizabeth hesitated for just a fleeting moment, a moment that only Sophia seemed to notice. Then she nodded again. She was wonderful, Victoria said, walking over and kissing Richard lightly on the cheek. We're really starting to understand each other, aren't we, Elizabeth? Elizabeth remained silent. Richard didn't seem to notice. He was far too engrossed in looking at Victoria with undisguised love in his eyes. I'm so glad, he said. I knew you two just needed time to adjust. Sophia watched the carefully staged scene from the doorway, her pocket feeling heavy with the weight of the evidence she carried. This was going to be even more challenging than she had anticipated. Victoria glanced at Sophia and offered a knowing smile, a smile that seemed to say, You see? He'll never believe you. You've already lost. But Sophia refused to accept defeat. Not yet. Not while Elizabeth still desperately needed her. Not while there was still a chance to save this innocent little girl from the monster lurking beneath the beautiful facade. Tonight, she would force Richard to see the truth, even if it ultimately cost her everything. Richard sat at the head of the dining table, loosening his tie. He looked visibly tired. The business trip had clearly worn him down, and all he desired was a peaceful evening at home. You are smart, kind, beautiful, and wonderful. None of this is your fault. Do you hear me? None of it. Elizabeth's lip trembled. Then why doesn't Daddy stop her? It was a question Sophia couldn't answer, not honestly. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, she said instead, choosing her words carefully. Sometimes they don't see what's right in front of them. Are you leaving? Elizabeth asked suddenly, her eyes wide with fear. I heard Victoria telling someone on the phone that you would be gone soon. Sophia wanted to lie, to promise Elizabeth that everything would be okay, but she couldn't bring herself to do it. I might have to go away for a little while, she said carefully. But I need you to be brave.
Can you do that?
I don't want to be brave. I want my mommy. Elizabeth's voice cracked, tears welling up in her eyes. I want everything to go back to how it was before. Sophia pulled the little girl into a tight hug, burying her face in Elizabeth's hair. Elizabeth clung to her, her small body shaking with sobs. I miss Mommy so much, Elizabeth cried, her voice muffled. And Daddy doesn't even talk about her anymore. It's like she never existed. It's like Victoria made her disappear. The sound of heels clicking on the hardwood floor made them both freeze. Victoria appeared at the top of the stairs, already dressed in a crisp white suit that made her look professional and powerful. Elizabeth, why aren't you dressed for school? Her voice was sharp, laced with impatience. Elizabeth pulled away from Sophia quickly, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. I don't want excuses. Get dressed now. Elizabeth ran into her room and slammed the door shut. Victoria looked at Sophia with undisguised disgust. Still trying to poison her mind against me? I see. I was comforting a crying child. You were making her weak. Victoria checked her watch, her movements precise and controlled. I have appointments today. Richard had a broken look and Victoria continued. Richard, you have to understand. I was trying to help. Elizabeth was so clingy, so needy. She needed to be stronger. She's 6 years old. Richard's voice echoed in the room. She's 6 years old, and she lost her mother. And you were supposed to love her. You were supposed to take care of her. I did. I clawed her. Victoria fired back. You destroyed her, Richard whispered. You made my daughter feel worthless. You made her think I didn't love her anymore. I didn't do dash. Get out, he ordered. He was enraged. Get out of the school. Get out of my house. Get out of our lives. Victoria's mask came down. Her features twisted, and rage twisted in them as well. You're choosing that pathetic child over me? After everything I've done for you, I made you happy again. I gave you a reason to live. You're a monster, Richard said, his voice now breaking. And I was too blind to see it. Victoria had lost. She could see it in Jane's disgusted face, the principal's horror, and in Richard's broken eyes. You'll regret this, she hissed. All of you. With that, she left. Her heels tapped angrily on the hallway. Silence fell upon the room. Then Richard did the only thing he could do.
He sat down spent as he asked,
Where's Elizabeth? I need to see my daughter. She's with Miss Sarah in the classroom. Jane. Gently, Jane began. But Mr. Walker, before you see Elizabeth, there's something you need to understand. She's deeply traumatized and will require therapy. Healing will take time, and she'll need you to be truly present, not the half-present father you've been this past year. Richard's eyes welled with tears. I failed her, he admitted. I was so consumed by my own grief and loneliness that I didn't see what was happening to my own daughter. You can't change the past, Jane said softly, but you absolutely can shape what happens next. Are you ready to put Elizabeth first? Truly first? Instead, she gave them something unexpected. The chance to build something real, a family. Imperfect and scarred, but filled with genuine love. And that was better than any fairy tale ending because it was real, and real was all that mattered. Hope you enjoyed watching. If this touched your heart, please kindly like, share, and subscribe. What you would have done quicker to save Elizabeth and comment where you're watching from. If you'd like to donate to help us keep sharing these life-changing stories, check the link in the description to support. Every dollar counts, and we're truly grateful for your support. Thank you, and see you in the next video. Victoria sat to his right, looking as flawlessly beautiful as always. She had changed into a soft blue dress that accentuated her gentle and kind demeanor. Her hand rested lightly on Richard's arm as she spoke about her day, her voice as soothing as music. Elizabeth and I baked cookies this afternoon, Victoria said, smiling warmly. Didn't we, sweetheart? Elizabeth sat across from them, listlessly pushing the food around on her plate. She nodded without looking up, her eyes fixed on the tablecloth. Sophia served the meal, her heart pounding anxiously in her chest. She had to find the right moment to speak to Richard alone, but Victoria seemed to sense Sophia's intentions. Every time Sophia attempted to catch Richard's eye, Victoria would laugh or touch his hand or say something that skillfully pulled his attention back to her. The wedding planner called today, Victoria continued, maintaining her pleasant conversation. Everything is set for next month, the flowers, the cake, the venue. It's going to be perfect. She turned her gaze towards Elizabeth, her smile widening slightly. And you're going to be our beautiful flower girl, right? Elizabeth's fork stopped moving altogether. Make sure Elizabeth gets to school on time. And start packing your things. I wasn't joking about tonight. Victoria turned and left, and Sophia heard the front door close with a decisive click. The house felt quieter without her, as if it could finally breathe again. Sophia helped Elizabeth get ready for school. The little girl moved slowly, as if every action took enormous effort. When they got to the kitchen for breakfast, Elizabeth barely touched her food. You need to eat, honey, Sophia urged gently. I'm not hungry. Just a few bites. Please. Elizabeth reluctantly took one small bite of toast, then pushed the plate away. My stomach hurts. Sophia felt Elizabeth's forehead, checking for a fever. There was none, but she knew that stress could manifest as physical symptoms in children, and Elizabeth was carrying more stress than any 6-year-old should ever have to bear. Does your stomach hurt a lot? Sophia asked, her voice full of concern. Elizabeth nodded. Above your career, your social life, even your own needs, just her? Richard wiped his eyes and stood. Take me to my daughter. They walked down the hall to Miss Sarah's classroom. Through the window, they saw Elizabeth at a small table, coloring with crayons. She looked so small, so vulnerable. Richard slowly opened the door. Elizabeth looked up. When she saw her father, her face crumpled.
Daddy.
Richard crossed the room in 3 strides, dropping to his knees and pulling Elizabeth into his arms. I'm so sorry, Princess.
So sorry.
Daddy was wrong. I made a terrible mistake. But I'm here now, and I will never let anyone hurt you again. Elizabeth clung to him, sobbing. You believe me? You believe what I said about Victoria? I believe you, Richard affirmed. I saw the videos. I heard what she said, and I am so sorry I didn't listen sooner. I'm sorry I allowed her to hurt you. I thought you didn't love me anymore, Elizabeth cried, her voice choked with tears. I thought you loved her more than me. Never. Never.